Okay, you have Q&A today. On your 120 Q&A number 1, you have Willard T. Yeoman, Mr. Yeoman, Wausau, and 7 Up. So this is your 120 Q&A number 1 for 5 minutes. Ready? What is your name, please?
Willard T. Yeoman.
How do you spell your last name?
Yeoman.
How old are you, Mr. Yeoman?
I am 32.
Are you married?
Yes, I am.
Do you have any children?
Yes, 3.
What kind of work do you do?
I am a real estate salesman.
Mr. Yeoman, on September 24, were you driving a car?
Yes, sir.
Were you driving by yourself?
Yes, I was.
There was nobody in the car with you, is that right?
That's right.
Were you traveling on business?
No, I was going to visit my mother.
Where does your mother live?
She lives in Wausau.
When did you leave for this trip?
I left right after breakfast.
About what time was that?
It was about 8:30.
Did you have anything to drink before leaving on this trip?
No, I didn't.
From the time you left home until the time of the accident, were you alone in the car?
Yes, I was.
Did you stop any place after you left home?
Yes, my engine was a little warm, so I stopped to take on some water. While the man was putting the water in, I had a bottle of 7 Up and a bag of potato chips.
Where was this?
I don't know. It was just a little station on the highway.
Did you have anything to drink anywhere along the way?
Yes, I had 1 bottle of beer with my lunch.
As you were riding along, did you have any difficulty in driving?
No,
Were you sleepy at all?
no, I wasn't.
How long have you been driving a car?
For about 15 years.
Will you tell us what the traffic was like after you got on the highway?
The traffic was fairly heavy.
In both directions?
Yes, sir.
How fast were you driving?
About 45 miles an hour.
Did you pass some of the cars?
I passed some and some passed me. I don't know how many.
Can you remember anything that might have interfered with your driving?
No, I can't.
Could you have fallen asleep?
No,
Do you remember where this accident happened?
it happened just this side of the river.
Do you know if the accident took place on a curve in the road or was it on a straight stretch?
It was on a curve, but a very gradual curve.
Was it before you made the turn onto the curve or after you had started the curve?
I was on the curve at the time.
Did you pass any cars while you were on the curve and before the accident happened?
I can't remember.
Did you see the car that was involved in the accident coming toward you?
I saw it like you see any car that is coming toward you. You don't pay any attention to it.
Can you say how far ahead of you this car was when you first noticed it?
I don't know for sure.
Do you have a conscious recollection of seeing it at some distance away, or was it there all of a sudden?
No, it was there, coming toward me.
On which side of the road were you when this car was coming toward you?
I was on my own side of the road.
Does the road have a center line on it?
Yes, I think so.
Were you over the center line?
I might have been over a little bit. I wasn't paying much attention.
Do you recall anything about the behavior of the other automobile when you're 120, number 2, you have Mr. Birch, Mr. Swanson, 3rd Oak, James Avenue, 3rd Avenue, Swanson, and Oak Street. This is your 120 Q&A number 2 for 5 minutes. Ready? Mr. Birch, will you state your relationship with the plaintiff, Mr. Swanson?
I am a friend of Mr. Swanson's.
Will you state whether or not you observed an automobile accident on September 10th?
I did.
Where was that accident?
It was at 3rd and Oak.
Where had you been coming from when you saw the accident?
We were coming from a friend's house.
And where does this friend live?
He lives on James Avenue off of 3rd.
About how far is that from where the accident happened?
I would say 4 or 5 blocks.
Will you state why you were over at this friend's house?
Well, he just got married and we went over there to see him for the first time.
I see. Who else was there besides yourself and your friend and his wife?
Mr. Swanson.
Did you arrive together or separately?
We arrived separately.
How did you get there?
I drove in my own car.
Will you state what you did while you were visiting your friend?
Oh, we watched TV and we had one drink. Then we ate.
How late did you watch TV? Do you remember approximately?
I would say until about 12:30.
And about what time did you leave?
It must have been a little after 2.
Did you leave separately?
That's right.
When did you next observe Mr. Swanson's car?
About a block away, because he went around the block and I met him at the next block. I got behind him.
Will you explain why he went around the block?
Because he was facing in the other direction.
Were both your cars on the same street but facing in different directions?
Yes.
Which way were you facing?
I was facing west so I could get on 3rd Avenue.
Will you explain the weather conditions as you started to drive home?
The weather was very good.
And the road conditions?
They were good too.
Then both your car and Mr. Swanson's car were proceeding on 3rd Avenue. Is that correct?
That's right.
In which direction were you proceeding?
We were going south.
How many blocks did you travel on 3rd before you got to Oak?
About 3 blocks.
And how far were you behind Mr. Swanson's car?
About half a block.
Are you able to remember your speed at that time as you were traveling down 3rd Avenue?
About 25 miles an hour.
Was the distance between your car and the Swanson car increasing or decreasing?
It stayed about the same.
Were you able to observe the speed of the Swanson car as it proceeded ahead of you?
He was going about the same speed as I was.
Now, as the Swanson car approached Oak Street, a half block ahead of you, will you tell the jury what you saw there?
Well, I saw his brake lights go on. That caught my attention, and the sound of the brakes caught my attention. Then I saw the crash.
Did you see the defendant's car before the crash?
No, I didn't.
When you saw the crash, what did you do?
I stopped.
Approximately where did you stop, if you remember?
About the middle of the block on 3rd.
Would this be north or south of the accident?
It would be north of the accident.
I see. And what did you do then?
I got out of the car and went to see what it was all about. I saw Swanson lying on the street.
Now, did you observe where the cars were as they came to rest after the accident?
Yes.
Okay, on your 100 Q&A number 1, you have Mr. Bates, Earl, Harvey, Portage, Mr. Weller, Mr. Westfall, and Ray Westfall. This is your 100 Q&A for 5 minutes. Ready? Number 1 Q&A. Mr. Bates, what, if anything, happened after you got into the car?
I asked Earl if he would like to drive.
What did he say?
He said, sure.
What time are we at now?
We are somewhere around 4:30.
What, if anything, occurred now?
I gave him directions to Harvey.
Did he make any comment as to why you were going to Harvey?
No.
Did he follow your directions?
Yes.
Did you arrive in Harvey without any mishaps?
Yes, we did.
During the journey from Portage to Harvey, did you have occasion to discuss with Mr. Weller what the trip was all about?
No, I didn't.
Backing up a little bit, did you have occasion on this trip to take along any scales?
Yes, I did.
Where were the scales?
In the trunk of the car.
Were they wrapped up in any way?
They were in a large grocery bag.
When you got to Harvey, did you go directly to Mr. Westfall's apartment?
No, we did not.
What, if anything, occurred?
We went to an apartment complex and got lost.
What occurred then?
We went to a gas station and I made a phone call to Ray Westfall. He gave me directions to his apartment.
Did you at any time during this trip tell Mr. Weller that once you arrived at your friend's apartment, you could sleep over and get high?
Yes, I did.
Was he agreeable to that?
Yes.
When you rang the bell at Mr. Westfall's apartment, who answered the door?
Mr. Westfall.
What, if anything, was said and by who when you encountered Mr. Westfall?
Well, I walked into the house. Earl was behind me. Mr. Westfall asked me if I had the drugs, and I told him that I did. Then I took the package out of my pants and laid it on the table and opened the package up.
When you mentioned that you had the drugs and you opened up the package, were you in a position to see the reaction of Mr. Weller?
No, I was not,
Why not?
because he was to the side of me and behind me.
Did he say anything?
No, he did not.
He made no comment?
No,
What conversation, if any, occurred between yourself and Mr. Westfall after you opened up the package?
I asked Mr. Westfall if he would like it weighed because I had some scales.
What did he say?
He said no.
By the way, with whom were you dealing?
I was dealing with Ray Westfall.
What did you expect to receive?
Upon delivery of the drugs, I was to receive $3,800 from him.
At any time during your negotiations with Mr. Westfall, were you told that he was going to sell the drugs to someone else?
Yes, I heard that he was going to sell them to someone else.
But you didn't know who it was?
No,
At any time in this conversation with Mr. Westfall, did he okay, your 100 Q&A number 2. You have Mr. Weller, Ray, Mr. Westfall, Mr. Sherwood, Joe, and Ray. And it continues. So this is your 100 Q&A number 2 for 5 minutes. Ready? Where was Mr. Weller standing when you said you had some scales in the car?
I really can't recall.
Would he have been within earshot?
Yes,
Would he have heard what you said?
yes, he would.
What, if anything, occurred then?
We all proceeded to get high. Then Ray closed the package up and took it to his bedroom.
To his bedroom?
Right.
Was that the last time you saw the narcotics that day?
Before the arrest?
Yes.
Until the arrest?
Yes.
Yes, that was the last time I saw the package.
You saw it go into the bedroom. What, if anything, did you do then?
Ray told us that he had a pull-out couch and we could use it to get some sleep because he had to go get the money in another apartment in the morning.
He had to get the money in another apartment in the morning?
Right.
Was there anybody else in this apartment at this time?
Yes, there was.
Did you see that person at that time?
No,
When did you see this person?
as he was leaving in the morning.
Where was this couch that was opened up for you and Mr. Weller?
In the living room.
And you and Mr. Weller both slept in the living room?
That's right.
What, if anything, happened to you after you went to lie down?
About a half hour later, I got up and decided to get high again.
What was Mr. Weller doing during this time?
He was lying down.
What, if anything, occurred next?
In the morning, I was awakened by Ray walking out the door. He said he would be back with the money in an hour.
What did you say?
I said, all right.
What happened after Mr. Westfall left?
I went back to bed, and then a little bit later, his roommate left.
What, if any, conversation occurred between you and the roommate?
None whatsoever.
What occurred after the roommate left?
Mr. Sherwood came to the door.
How did you know he was at the door?
He rang the doorbell.
Who went to the door?
I did.
At this time, how were you dressed?
I was in my underwear.
How was Mr. Weller dressed?
He was fully dressed.
Was he already up?
Yes,
And where was he?
in the living room.
Was he on the bed?
He was sitting on the bed.
But he was fully dressed at this time?
Yes, he got dressed when Ray left.
You saw him?
Right.
What, if anything, was discussed between yourself and the man who came to the door? Did he identify himself?
Yes, he said his name was Joe. He said he was a partner of Ray or something like that. Then he asked if Ray was home. When I told him he was not home, he said he would come in and wait.
Did he come in?
Yes,
What happened then?
he told me he was there for the dope deal. I ignored